Hello, welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. I'm Lauren Hubele, and I'm here with my dear friend and mentor, Jyoti Wind. Jyoti, welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Good to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. Yeah. Will you open our space for us today?
Sure. Grandmothers and grandfathers, spirits of the East, we call to you. Come and bring comfort to those who need comfort. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the South, spirits of the South, we ask for your presence, showing us our path. Grandmothers and grandfathers and healing spirits of the West, we call to you. We ask for your grace, your healing grace. Grandmothers and grandfathers, wisdom keepers of the North, we ask for your wisdom to see beyond the day-to-day, to see the larger picture of possibility. Grandfather Sky, we ask for your protection. Grandmother Earth, we ask for your mercy and compassion as we walk through our lives. And to that inner wisdom, that ancestor who lives in our hearts, may that being also be present. So I have a short piece on the topic of leaving the earth. I am freeing myself from the shackles and attachments to the love and griefs of my life here. So when it is time to leave this place, I will go without baggage, free to move on.
Beautiful. Jyoti, thank you. We're moving into this fourth episode on the topic of death. And um, no light topic, no easy topic here. And you've really graced us, and I mean that, over these last three sessions with a metaphysical view, a shamanic view, and your view as an astrologer and poet on the different aspects of death. And for folks that are just joining us, I really want to encourage you to go back into episode 1 and 2 and 3, because there's an opportunity to hear um, some different themes to that. And I think one of the first themes I was really interested in, Jyoti, was this idea of updating our files. And you talked about, you've grown and expanded as a person. Are you still carrying and holding your childhood views on death? Is there anything else you want to share with that?
Um, no, I think that because of my childhood the way it was and my father's views on death, I think that was probably why I chose him to be my father. So it would be a catalyst for me to explore my own views, what the possibilities are, what the customs and belief systems are of different religions, different cultures, different peoples, and also the metaphysical and spiritual aspects of death and dying. And so I just feel like, in retrospect, that it was perfect. That
Yeah.
it was perfect. That without his fear of death and dying, it wouldn't have maybe come up for me in my life the way it has.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds perfect. And we talked about grief and how everyone has their own process. And we talked about sometimes we can get entangled with the person that has passed, and that prolongs the grief process. And sometimes um, we can hold our grief and move through it in um, a, a way that keeps us from entangling with that person that's passed.
Yes. And we also want to be mindful of the possibility that we don't want to hold that soul back from where its next step on its own path is ready to take it.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me because we also had some conversations about death and about sometimes sudden death arises, and someone might get stuck in that journey. Do you want to share anything further on that?
Just that there are beings who, some people can call them spirit guides, some people can call them angels, but that there are beings who are um, dedicated, you could say, as helpful entities to help you pass over, to help you find your way. And that there's guardian spirits, there's family members who are waiting with open arms for that passage, for that greeting of you in your new body, so to speak.
Yeah.
You're in your spirit body, having left your physical behind.
Yes. Yes. And then probably this leads us into what you'll share today. But we talked about death practices and how different they are from culture to culture. And some actually free the spirit, and others hold the spirit to the body.
Yes, yes. And it's all based on, well, teachings for
Right.
one reason or another and how they developed.
Yeah.
Yes, and why and what they see as an end result for that purpose.
Sure. Sure.
It's like people in India dressing in white, because it's the release of the soul from the body and it's a celebration. I mean, it's an acknowledgement of the trials and tribulations that life brings in the day to day, but it's also the acknowledgement of the freeing of the soul from that.
Yeah. Beautiful custom. So, Jyoti, that brings us to here and today and now, where um, I believe you'd like to close this series out talking about the moment of death and what you've come to believe through your own explorations.
Yes. So I went through a lot of metaphysical training in the early 70s, early to mid 70s, and so at the moment of death, I was taught there is this white light that dawns, and this white light is the light of liberation, and it's what frees you from the karmic wheel of death and rebirth and constant lives and all of that. And so this white light dawns, and if you can merge with it out of your desire, your desire to merge with it, if it's strong, if you catch it. Actually, it's not a white light. My mistake here. It's a clear light. It's the
Mm.
clear light of liberation. The white light dawns secondly. But for those who can see that clear light and have a desire to merge with it, it is liberation. There are lesser lights that come, white light, more of a maybe a white to yellow pale light. These lights also help you move on, but it doesn't free you necessarily from that wheel of incarnation.
Hmm. Hmm. So, What school of thought do these ideas come out of?
So in 1969, I found this group of people in LA. They had an organization and a church called Astara. The Astara now is, I don't know. The Astara now is under different auspices, and I'm not affiliated with them. But at the time, Robert and Erleen Chaney had started this church of metaphysics and mystic Christianity based on the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. And so that was my training. She was a teacher of mine, a mystic, as she called herself and saw herself. She channeled teachings from ascended masters. Um, and I know how some of this sounds, especially with what's out there today. But this was a very serious person who was in tune with her own um, soul and her own spirit, a lovely woman. And this was who I studied with. And this was what she was shown to impart in her teachings to other people.
Hmm.
And so I've talked to people who have had that moment in time where one person in particular who touched a hot wire in a car engine one time and called to mind what I had told him and at the moment of death, because basically he was there in that moment. He came back from it, but in that moment he thought about that. What he saw was a white light because it wasn't his time to go. He could come back from that. The clear light, from what I understand, is what takes you out and through and not having to do the reincarnational karma routine anymore.
Hmm.
You're freed from it.
Hmm.
So that says to me in my own thinking process that it really kind of allows you to step into a much higher level of consciousness and possibly merge with your higher self,
Hmm.
because you're not on that wheel of soul lessons and karma and multiple lives and deaths and reorientations. And so it's like you have the opportunity to step out of that routine, out of that cycle, and be um, beyond it, if you want to use that term.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So we merge with our higher self, and then what?
I have no idea. I'm not there.
Do you have some thoughts, Jyoti?
Um, well, we've talked about evolution before, and so from a metaphysical point of view, we have been devolving away from the one, the God or the Great Mother, or something even beyond that concept, perhaps the creative energy of this whole world that we are a part of. So we come away because we were unconsciously merged with that being, with that creator. We were just part of it. And so there was a desire, the creator had a desire, perhaps. It's odd to use these words, but the creator had a desire to know itself. And so we, as part of that creation, came away so that we could, it's called devolve into matter, and then become more conscious of who we were and what we were a part of, and make the choice to evolve back consciously with conscious awareness toward that oneness, toward that creator, so that the creator through us can know itself.
And this process you're sharing, is this an individual process or is this a collective process?
It's both. It's both, because as individuals, we make those choices. This is a zone of free will, and yet as a mass of humanity, we are making these choices. We are evolving. I mean, you can see it in babies when babies are born. They have a whole different countenance, a whole different look, a whole different shape to their head and faces than babies that were born, let's say, 100 or 200 years ago. There's a light, there's an awareness, there's a symmetry, it seems, as we've evolved. I mean, it's subtle. It's
Yeah,
subtle. It's not anything stark like, is this baby human? I mean, but
sure.
we're moving this mass of humanity. We're moving in it and with it and behind or ahead of it, moving it toward conscious awareness so that we can consciously desire that oneness with all that is, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So we don't know what happens beyond the light, but we can only draw some conclusions from just what we think is happening on Earth, right? And this ability, because in your shamanic view, you can surmise about how sometimes folks get stuck, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yes.
also how they might reincarnate again.
Yes, and that comes in metaphysics and shamanic theory, and different religions also embrace that concept that maybe we have a rest. We go into the light through the portal of light. We have a rest. Maybe we experience what we think death is. It might be to go to sleep. It might be to dream. It might be to have a great meal with your family members that have passed on. It might be meeting your ancestors and really understanding perhaps what this life you've lived was all about and what the lessons were that you embraced or that you ignored or that were presented to you during the course of your life. I mean, a deep life review, let's say. And then it's up to what your soul, what your spirit feels is needed next, whether you step onto that wheel of rebirth and look over a family and a family line and decide whether, that's a family that would meet your needs for your next growth process. I remember listening to a man talk about between lives, and he has a podcast about pre-birth, and he felt he had to, as a spirit, as a soul, really face some deep fears in himself that he had carried through lifetimes. And so he picked a family deliberately and a life path deliberately, not that it would be easy, but that it would throw in his path opportunities for him to face those fears, for him to perhaps grow past them in this life, or at least to make some headway.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Yeah, I love that idea of that moment of looking down and does so that's certainly a metaphysical view. How does a shamanic view on that look?
I think it's very similar. I think it's very similar. As far as death in the shamanic world, I mean, it's more about um, in helping souls who are stuck pass over. We are also preparing ourselves for our own death. So that the psychopomp work, as we call it, um, is really a practice for your own going beyond, your own leaving of the body, and having your spirit allies show up and help take you to that light, as maybe you've done that work with other souls that are stuck in between. And so after death, um, I think in the shamanic world, it's more about a reunion with your ancestors, and a look at, again, a life review, a deep life review, and what you bring away from that life, what skills or what understandings, and by skills I mean how to navigate your own stuff. So, where you got caught, where you were able to let go. And I think that it then becomes a learning process on that side, as well as whatever you learned here. I think there's rest periods. I think that you don't have a body that you're carrying around, so rest might look different. In some metaphysical worlds, they see a summer land where people go and reunite with their friends and their dogs and cats, and it's eternal summer, and it's just a real rest period. Personally, I think there's other planes of existence beyond that,
Hmm.
and that we may be in learning environments, and studying things that perhaps, or learning things or absorbing things that we will bring into the next life as part of what we give to humanity, what we give back to humanity, and help humanity along in its movement, in its evolution.
Yeah. Jyoti, if you think back over this theme of death and afterlife, aside from your father, is there anyone that has influenced your thoughts on this in a deep way? An author or a spiritual teacher?
Well, this woman, Erleen Chaney,
Hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely, because the teachings are from the Egyptian mystery schools, where you laid in a sarcophagus for a period of time to experience that sense of death and dying, and working with the ego and working with the subconscious and stuff like that. I would say between my father and Erleen Chaney, and my Jupiter in the eighth house, it was inevitable.
Yeah, beautiful. Anything else you feel needs to be added to this series before we close it out?
Um, no, nothing comes to mind. Just a takeoff on a Buddhist prayer at the end here.
Let's do that.
Okay. May all beings be healthy. May all beings learn kindness. May all beings know peace.
Thanks, Jyoti.
You're welcome.
Thanks for sharing all this. And listeners, I really want to direct your attention to Jyoti's website, which is
JyotiWindAstrology.com. And I also have free classes and offerings on a free YouTube channel under my name.
wonderful. Thanks again.